Hello, this is Ransom1690 back here with another video. And today, well, first, before I get into the topic, y'all see it's kind of raining this time. So I decided to just get out, take a walk. I don't know, maybe get me something to eat. I try not to do that most days. But yeah, just fighting stress and depression is a bitch. But I'm gonna continue to fight through and to bring y'all these videos. So today I really wanted to talk about this artist because I believe his backstory ties into the whole philosophy of antinatalism. And this artist is Leonardo Da Vinci. Now, I'm really not a fan of his artwork, even less now that I'm an antinatalist, because you know his artwork centers around a lot of themes of Christianity or religion, which I disagree with, or it centers around paintings of rich, noble men and women. And that's the real topic of this video, is just how life was during the time this artist was alive. And I think his story is really interesting because when he was born into a family of illegitimacy. Like, his father, he was a rich, wealthy nobleman, and this man, he shacked up with a slave woman, which happened to be his mother. And apparently that was taboo around that time because that made the child, like I said, illegitimate. So when you're born like that, you don't, according to the time period or what these people are saying in this documentary, you are not permitted education or opportunities to actually rise through the ranks of society. Just however you were born, whatever family you were born to, that's the lifestyle that you were stuck with for your entire life. It's not that you couldn't rise through the ranks or make a better life for yourself. It's that society just would not allow it. You were not permitted to be educated on particular things that you could use to better yourself, and you just had to stay either poor or you were born into a rich, wealthy family with opportunities. And that's what his life was expected to be. And what made it worse is that they knew. You can't tell me that they didn't know this, that his mom or his dad didn't know that before shacking up and bearing his children. And to make the matters worse was just the inconsiderateness of considering like what this child is going to go through, because then they went on to proclaim the bearing of this child to the entire community. On top of them having a child out of wedlock that was also considered very impure around that time. So they just went and they broadcasted this whole thing to the entire community, knowing what this child was gonna have to go through. Like, you can't tell me they didn't know. And then just how things were during that time, there was a lot of, noblemen fighting against each other. And back then, the power, it wasn't held by a government, it was held by the church. The church was the ultimate power. So now you have these religious people who are really just glorified warlords going to war with each other and trying to take over land. And they were conquistadors. That's what they were. And once they took over this land, they were able to tell the inhabitants thereof what they were allowed to believe what kind of lifestyle they were allowed to live, all the way down to what type of art they were allowed to like. And I think nudity art or anything considered pagan to the faith, it was frowned upon, and you would either be arrested or killed for having a different belief. But this is the type of world that they brought this child into. And the only reason we know about Leonardo da Vinci now is because of this one connection he was able to get through his rich father through the arts. So he was able to learn how to craft, how to sculpt, how to paint. And fortunately, he was really good at it, that he was able to advance his status and start taking on his own commissions and open his own shop. But it wasn't supposed to be that way. If it wasn't for him having connections with this rich father, he would have been screwed. He would have been screwed because, again, he was known to be an illegitimate child. So he really wasn't even supposed to have been allowed into the art field in the first place, which was real big around the time of the Renaissance, because, again, you had a lot of noblemen who just like to flex their wealth, and they would commission these artists to basically feed their ego through these paintings and these murals. And that's how life was. And just before I go on, it just really baffles me still just how two parents can be that inconsiderate of the time period and of the culture that they will knowingly bring a child into a world where he will be frowned upon, and then you broadcast it to the fucking community. It just baffles me. And that goes back to what I was saying, that parents, they really don't think about the things that their child can go through. Not a lot of them. I don't think a lot of them really think about that, because look at these people. And this was way centuries ago. I think the Renaissance era, it took place around the 1500s. That's my guess. I'll have to look it up to make sure I'm right. But the whole bullshit that we have going on with this procreation stuff now, it was happening back then. Just parents really not thinking about what their child can go through. And again, you had all the religious wars and all the land conquer. It really isn't no different than how it is now, honestly, when I'm hearing myself talk about it. But back to the story. After he was able to prove himself as an artist, he was able to get commissions and travel and just really put his name out there to where he didn't have to live a poor lifestyle. And then it was brutal. He still had to work. He still had to refine his craft. And then he had to compete with other artists. He had to compete with other artists to be able to paint for these rich families. And that's another thing too. The only reason we know his name, the reason why we know the name Leonardo da Vinci, is because he succeeded. He's one of the lucky ones who was able to succeed despite his hardships, but seldom will you ever hear about the ones who failed. Seldom will you ever hear about the ones who tried the same thing he did and they flunked out, or they failed, or you can only guess what happened to them. But you don't hear about the people who failed too much. It's only a few people who failed in this game called life that you will hear about. But everything I'm saying about how this artist, how he had to compete with other artists to get his name out there, to stand out, to earn favor with these rich royal religious families, to basically not be a pauper. You know, it's the same thing that's going on now with our society. Like, you know, having to get up, go to work, and, you know, compete with other people just to even get these jobs. And regardless of just how much you put your best foot forward, you can still fail. And it's a saying I hear a lot from other anti-natalists that say, for there to be winners, there has to be losers in this society. And this is basically a perfect example of that. You know, just not everyone in this society is able to succeed, but yet we are treated like it's all their fault if they fail. And it was the same way then, except I guess it was a little bit worse because of the family you were born into. Actually, really, I don't even think that's any different. Like, it's probably a lot more hidden now in our society that however you're born, it affects the opportunities you're able to have in life, but we just mask it a lot more, see? And we try to pretend that, oh, everything is a lot better than it was back then, when really it's the same exact shit going on, all the way down to selfish parents bringing children into this world where they're gonna have to fight and compete for survival. And what really baffles me even more is how they said that, like, you know, the rich father, he went on to have 8 more children, and the mother, who was poor, who was a pauper, who was the one involved into bringing her son into a life of illegitimacy, she went to bear more children. She had 5 more children. So I'm like, what the fuck, man? So you just bore a son out of wedlock, which is already a big no-no around that time. But then you're a poor ass. And so now you bore this son into an illegitimate lifestyle where he was destined to fail. And of course he didn't fail because he had connections through the rich father. But then she went on to have 5 more children as a poor woman. So it's like you brought more lives into a world where now they're guaranteed to suffer. They're not going to be able to receive a proper education. And they don't say who she had sex with. You know, they don't say it was by the same rich guy. So more than likely, they ain't gonna have these little secret connections to get out of that shit. And it's like the selfishness of it all, the entire thoughtlessness, it's all the same. It's the same damn thing going on back then, or that had went on back then, that's going on now. Like, other than technology, times have not changed, people have not changed. We're still doing all the same bullshit, just bringing lives into this world, this crooked, sadistic world that doesn't give a shit about you. And it's wrong. And again, about this Leonardo Da Vinci guy, you only know about him because he succeeded, because of the beautiful art. I mean, me personally, it ain't for me, but a whole lot of people like his art. And that's the only reason why you know about him. But I guarantee you, if he would have been one of the ones who failed, you wouldn't hear a damn thing about this guy. And that's another thing about society. We only like to put a pretty picture over this life and look at the people who succeed and say, okay, well, this life is fair, this life has opportunities for everyone, because look at what this person was able to do. But we don't consider too much the people who failed. And it's ridiculous. I just think the whole thing is stupid. Like this whole procreation shit going on, like how you're able to be born into a world without your consent, involuntarily, and you don't even know if you're gonna be born to a well-off family that's gonna be able to provide for you or teach you really anything to be able to succeed in this life, or if you're gonna be born to a shitty family who's just gonna not give a shit about you. Like, you don't know. And it's just crazy. Like, I don't really know what else to say about it. But yeah, that's how it is. That's how our world is. And that's why I am never bringing anyone into this world. And so that's the video for today.